to the 49ers First and 10 podcast presented by Cisco. 10 minutes of the most up-to-date 49ers news first thing in the morning. I'm your host, Brianna McDonald. Joining me is 49ers team reporter Lindsay Flores and special guest KNBR's Adam Copeland. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you guys. We did it last year, and for the most part, I think the season went well, so I'm glad we're picking up where we left off.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, to begin, we've got some off-the-field news before we dive into the Week 3 matchup. Modern era nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025 have been announced. Former 49ers making this list include Jeff Garcia, Ricky Watters, Charlie Garner, Anquan Bolden, Vernon Davis, Delaney Walker, Joe Staley, Navarro Bowman, Ken Norton Jr., and Antoine Bethea. That's 10 nominees with 49ers ties. Lindsay, what's it like to reflect on the incredible legacy of the 49ers franchise when looking at this list?
I think that this is a list that always includes a lot of 49ers great because we say it all the time. This is a storied franchise, and I did want to give a little special shout out to Vernon Davis, Delaney Walker, Joe Staley, and Antoine Bethea, all first time eligible, and they got the nod. Obviously, we start with 167 names. That's going to get cut down several times before we get to the finalist list, but a huge shout out to a bunch of iconic 49ers players that have really made this franchise what it is today.
Adam, tell us about these players and how they've impacted the game. Who jumps off of this list?
What's the coolest thing for me is that we're getting to a point now where it's a lot of players who I got to grow up watching, right? Like we're at the stage now where guys are making Hall of Fame lists or becoming candidates where we got to see the entirety of their careers. So I feel now like versus being a kid when you would look and you go, well, I know that guy's great. We know the numbers that they were capable of putting up. I think it's pretty cool that we get to see some of these guys. Jeff Garcia, I don't know that he'll make it in, but what stands out to me first and foremost is last year Brock Purdy sets the single-season 49ers passing record for yards in a season, and it's incredible to think that in his first season, he passes guys like Jeff Garcia and Steve Young and Joe Montana. They've had so much great legacy at the position. So for a guy to put his name on that list like Brock Purdy did against some of those other greats, who knows what the rest of his career holds, but I think that stuff's pretty cool because Jeff Garcia was my guy. Love that he was a San Jose State guy, too, and now he's on a Hall of Fame. It's pretty cool.
I think it's also really cool, like you mentioned, not only did in our lifetimes, like we get to see these players, like a lot of these players are still around and they come and do speaking engagements at Levi's Stadium. There are tickets to victory guests. And it's cool that now you're seeing them, get their flowers and like their careers honestly did not end that long ago. So very much in recent memory and definitely hanging around the organization, which we all enjoy.
Absolutely. Congratulations to those 10 for being nominated. The next step in the process is for the list to be reduced down to 50 total nominees in mid-October, and we wish them all the best of luck in their Hall of Fame journey. Now, after a clear day off, the 49ers are getting back to practice today in preparation for their trip to LA to face the Rams in Week 3. We have an injury update from head coach Kyle Shanahan following the game in Minnesota. Lindsay, could you share any updates on the 49ers injury front?
Yeah, so I'm sure it's not the update that any 49ers fans really want to hear. Wide receiver Deebo Samuel did suffer a calf strain towards the end of that Week 2 Minnesota Vikings game, like second to last play of the game is what head coach Kyle Shanahan said. And it is going to take Deebo out of the lineup for probably a couple weeks. That's obviously not a great thing, especially when you have CMC recently added to the injured reserve list, a top weapon for the 49ers, but there is a lot of talent on this roster. So it's next man up headed into Week 3 against the Rams, who are also dealing with a number of pretty significant injuries. They added Puka Nacua to their injured reserve list, and then you have Cooper Kupp also dealing with a pretty significant injury.
Adam, tell us in what ways the 49ers offense is going to have to step up in light of the team's injuries in Week 3 against the Rams.
I think that's the most pressing question you have to ask about what they do with the offense. You figure they scored 8 consecutive times on 8 straight drives in Week 1 against the New York Jets. 6 of them were field goals. Now, they had a couple of opportunities in Week 2 where they did not punch it in for 6, and they did not get the ball across the goal line. What's so funny about this, and not funny, but last year when they had the 3 consecutive game losing streak into the bye week. They scored exactly 17 points in all three of those games. They didn't have Deebo Samuel. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey for the entirety of that Vikings game. So some similarities. What I will say, and if there's a saving grace to some of this, it's that you've got a long way to go. The hope is that you will get Christian McCaffrey back at some point, that Deebo is not like an injured reserve type player. But you look back to 2019 and 2021 and how they manufactured offense, that's when Deebo became the wide back, right? When they lose Elijah Mitchell, when they lose Raheem Mostert, and Trey Sermon was starting games, Deebo became the red zone weapon. I think it's going to be a different looking Niner offense that we've seen in recent years. And I also think you're going to see some guys emerge. Juwan Jennings just had a great start to his season. He maybe slots in now to the number 2 receiver spot. We'll see what Ayuk can do. Maybe it's there's rookies in the backfield like Isaac Guerrero or Patrick Taylor maybe take some of those carries. If there's a place where I think the 49ers can find success without having a superstar player, it's the running back position. And Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan did that for many years. So I think it's going to be probably a whole team effort, but I think we're going to see some different goal line type stuff or red zone type stuff that we've seen in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, Lindsay, let's talk about the setting of this upcoming game. The 49ers are looking to bounce back from their first loss. This will be their first game against a divisional opponent this season, and it's in LA, one of the faithful's most favorite road trips every single year. In your time working with the team, tell us what those LA games are like, and what are some of the storylines that you're most excited to see unfold this season?
I didn't name SoFi Stadium Levi's South, but that is what I hear everyone calling it. It's always a red out, right? I feel like it's a very convenient trip for NorCal fans. You either hop on a 50-minute flight down to LA, or the drive, really, if you don't get caught in traffic, it's like 5.5 hours, and a very dedicated Niner fan base always is down to make the trip. We're going to be, the team will be wearing home reds. It's usually a red out. You can definitely hear it. It feels like a home game that's not actually a home game. I always look forward to it. It's one of my favorite road trips of the year.
Adam, your thoughts on that red out at SoFi Stadium?
It's pretty cool. I went last year. I think was my first time. It was for sure the first time I'd been to SoFi Stadium. And I've been to games in other sports, like when the San Francisco Giants were playing really well in San Diego, Giants fans would go nuts during these World Series years. I don't know that I've ever been to an opposing stadium where quite literally the fan base doesn't really exist in Los Angeles. Like, again, we talked about teams that and players that were around when we were growing up. Like, they were the St. Louis Rams. They weren't the Los Angeles team. So there's a whole generation of people who are in Los Angeles who think, I know I'm a Dodger fan, I know I'm a Laker fan, but the closest football team to me is the San Francisco 49ers. So it's pretty cool being in California, being from the Bay Area in Northern California, to have this weird, like, uniting of fan bases who are all rooting for the Niners and yet have totally different allegiances elsewhere. Like, the SoFi game every year has got to be one of the coolest things.
Yeah, and Adam, let's widen the scope just a bit here before we get into this week's matchup, and give us your insight on what the state of the NFC West division is like now after just 2 weeks of football. What have you seen from the Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals, and where do you see the 49ers standing within that group?
I actually have the Rams as a playoff team, and now looking at 0-2, and you mentioned, Lindsay, that they're missing their top 2 receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They got banged up last year. I think in this game, the Niners even maybe had lost Brendan. I used at one point, I think they were dealing with an injury to Cooper Kupp at this time last season, maybe week 3, something like that, early in the year. The NFC West, I think, it's pretty incredible the Niners have so much talent in that they can lose a guy like Christian McCaffrey, and really nobody thought that their playoff or Super Bowl aspirations changed all that much. Like, that says a lot about the talent on the roster. For the Cardinals, I think they're a little bit dangerous because Kyler Murray is just kind of a backyard football player. He can be down 3 scores late and he can bring you back. I think that defense has a lot of work to go. The offensive line and the defensive line of the Rams, you mentioned, Lindsay, how banged up the Rams are. I think they've got like 5 or 6 guys, including 4 members of their offensive line, who may not be available or are not 100% for Sunday. That's going to make it really tough for them to compete. They lose Aaron Donald. And then the Seahawks are kind of a wild card team. They maybe are a wild card team. They played pretty well last week. They still got 2 big time receivers. Kenneth Walker is hurt, but they found a way to put out back game last week, and DK Metcalf had a huge game. It's the Niners division to win, and beneath that, honestly, I could see any combination of either the Seahawks and then the Cardinals, or the Cardinals and the Seahawks. But I think the Rams right now are struggling to not be the worst team in the NFC based on health.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Faithful, that will do it for today. Subscribe to First and 10 presented by Cisco for more 49ers updates, and turn on the notifications for any breaking news with the Chains episodes. Thanks for tuning in.